And we're live. I'm here with Matt Erickson of At Will Kingpilled. Matt, how you doing?
How's it going, man? That was a kicking intro. I was over here bumping it.
Thank you. Yeah, this is the first episode and first of four. Trailer Park Symposium. When he played into the white trash Socrates bit.
I got to say that I wanted to say this right from the jump that I think that White Trash Socrates is one of the best brands. It just is just chef's kiss. I think
Thank
that it was actually, so you're the first person I ever heard about pit vipers from. You're the first person I ever heard use the phrase pit viper, and you had your pictures with them. And if it wasn't for that, then I wouldn't have the new Kingpilled logo, because the new Kingpilled logo I got from using the Open AI. I just typed Orthodox Christian wearing pit vipers with a Byzantine cross in synthwave style. And that's what it spit out for me.
It looks so much like you. I assume someone drew it.
Yeah, that's what it was. Kind of creepy when it popped out.
Hilarious.
And I was like, whoa, it's me.
You are looking more Orthodox every time I see a picture of you. It's the bigger the beard, the more frizzled the hair. It's very on brand. I like it.
Yep. It's funny going like this last weekend when I went to see Father Josiah Trenum in Houston at Father Joseph Honeycutt's church, who Father Joseph Honeycutt of the podcast Orthodixie, which I think is the best podcast name in the business. I guess maybe it's second best to White Trash Socrates. But it was funny being there and being around a whole bunch of Orthodox people all together in one spot. Because the church we go to in Lockhart is very small. It's 25 people maybe. And so we were in a crowd of, I don't know, a few hundred. And It's funny how many of the men are like basically look like me, like big beards, long hair. Hair's sometimes put up, but there's definitely a look going on there.
Awesome. Yeah, it's So I figured we'll kind of hop into this. Reason I hadn't having you on is everybody wasn't heard yet. This would be the last of 4 episodes. I'm ending the stream. There will be 2 more episodes. One would be a live in-person interview with my friend Cato. One would be an atheist tier listing. We're going to rank different philosophers and probably atheist and F tier on Austriatomism. And I'm going to end it with a 12 or maybe 24-hour live stream. I'm not sure how long I'm going to go for yet. I did 12 last time, and I'm like, you know what? I got a weekend off of that. I could get some energy drinks and do 24 hours. Go out with a bang. That'd be kind of fun.
That would be amazing. Yeah, that'd be man. 24 hours. I saw a video recently of a guy that did some kind of challenge. I don't remember who it was. I think it was someone prominent, but he did some kind of challenge where he watched the same music video on repeat for 24 hours, and he gets jamming on it. He's going great. And then after the first hour, he's like, oh man, this is a mistake. And by like 20 hours in, he can just like barely keep himself on camera. That's going to be you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 12 hours. Last one was thankfully, because I have so many people I know all over the time zones. It's easy to kind of always have a guest.
Oh,
and like the few hours I didn't have a guest, I streamed myself playing a video game.
Okay.
Just to fall back on, so that was helpful. It's going to be fun. And I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, so the reason I wanted to have you on one more time was that the first actually good episode of my podcast, I had a lot of people on before you, but the first actually good episode, I think, was when you and I covered The Machiavellians by James Burnham.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's just that was like the first real red pill I was saying. I don't use the term anymore, but that was like, okay, politics is more than just state bad.
Right,
there's more to this. And that was kind of fun. We both kind of I think you were left anarchism by that time. I was kind of on the way out from then. I tried to save it by being a hoppy, and I kind of hope that those loops everyone goes through when they leave it. But the cope, hopper cope. I still love the hoppy ends. I think most of you are great.
Mm-hmm.
You're just nerds, and you need to stop it. But so I figured, great. No, we both were anarchists. We both left anarchism and both kind of focused more on our respective Christianities, Catholicism, Eastern Orthodoxy. And so I kind of figured we'd go through what attracted us to anarchism, why we liked it, why we no longer like it, why we left it, and kind of talk on our respective the effects of our focus on Christianity has been on our lives. So you go first. Why were you drawn to anarchism, you think?
Man, I think a big part of it, if I'm completely honest, a big part of it is edgelording, being able to say the edgy thing, being the most extreme, purity, all those kinds of things. It was definitely a big part of that. But I mean, frankly, I believed in it. It just seemed like the truest thing that I'd ever seen. It was it felt like someone was finally like if you could imagine your life being like a board game kind of, and you're just going through it but you don't know all the rules, and somebody finally reads the rules to you, and you're, oh, okay, that's what's going on. Okay,
Yeah.
now I understand why everything is the way that it is. And so I think it's a bit trite at this point, but everybody goes through these idealistic phases where they're like, oh, I've got the perfect vision. If everybody would just listen to me, I've got the perfect vision for exactly how the society can run. And I guess what I kept seeing is you have all of these different people who have their ideal vision for how society should run. And they're like, if everybody would just listen to me, then society would run perfectly. And yet nobody ever will listen to them. The people who have all those great ideas, who just want people to listen to them, are the people that nobody listens to. They're the ones who are always the voices crying out in the wilderness. And I was like, why is this? Is there some kind of fundamental flaw here that is preventing this ideology from taking root? And I think probably the biggest chink in the armor for me that developed first was realizing that in order to achieve anarchism is ostensibly anti-democratic, but in order to achieve an anarchist society requires essentially democratic means. You have to try to you have to have some kind of grassroots organization that builds up and catches fire and everybody signs on, and then you got to try to get everybody to buy in. And I was getting involved with the LP. I was all gung ho at the LPMC, and it hit me. I was like, I'm going to be going out and knocking on doors, trying to get people interested in politics. And ostensibly the biggest demographic is going to be people who are not already interested in politics. Because it's going to be pretty hard to try to convince a Democrat to vote Republican or vice versa, or to try to convince a Democrat to vote Libertarian instead of voting against Republicans, and vice versa with Republicans against Democrats. So really what you're looking for is like the disenchanted third-party voter kind of. But a lot of those people are getting disenchanted for a reason. As a libertarian, I want everybody to be disenchanted with the political process and not participate. So that I kind of felt like I started wandering in the wilderness a little bit. I was like, how's this supposed to work out then? There seems to be a fatal flaw in the heart of libertarianism, just as a philosophy in general, that the only way it could succeed is if it had held popular appeal, and it by definition does not hold popular appeal. So how do you overcome that? And I think that's what really started me on my way out of anarchism.
Yeah, I think for me it was a realization of, one, the importance of power, and libertarianism is kind of anti the means of gaining, not anti-power, but the anti the ways of gaining power. And so the only way they have to gain power is through, like you said, like a grassroots movement, which just sounds like a restarting of democracy.
Right,
Then it was kind of getting a question of the ethics of anarchism. The more I kind of got into deeper into the theory, at the same time as I was getting deeper and deeper into libertarian theory, I was getting deeper and deeper into my Catholic readings and that kind of stuff. And I was like, these can't work together. They can't, like, at the ultimate end of the day, there are great Catholic people who are all libertarians, like Tom Wood, like Lou Rockwell. I think they're fantastic. I think most of them kind of accept it's not going to happen in their lifetime. So they don't have to deal with those eventualities or the ethical problems at the end of anarchism, but they know what the steps taken to get there would be better in the modern day, so they justify on those grounds. But I think it's actually kind of fair. I think that some of the libertarian policies they were implemented would actually be better for society. But you don't need to be a libertarian to hold those beliefs.
Right.
So it's kind of an ethical, and then more and more the anarchists just got on my nerves. that was the big one.
Yeah,
right.
I
saw making this with Pete, with all these great people, and I started seeing them just rail against you, and they started railing against me, and I'm like, oh, these aren't good people.
No,
most of it's not good people.
That was I like to tell people that the reason that people aren't convinced of the value of a libertarian society isn't because they haven't heard the libertarian message. It's because they have heard the libertarian message. Hearing the libertarian message is a really big turnoff from libertarianism for a lot of people.
Yeah. Libertarianism is great. Libertarians aren't. Like, if you meet a libertarian, like, oh, I read Rossbard. It's pretty cool. Then you meet a Rossbard, you're like, that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Not great.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it was probably the pragmatic case that did me in first, recognizing that just pragmatically this is tilting at windmills. This just isn't going to happen. And that was first the realization I had about it being supposed to be anti-democratic, but now it's going to rely on democratic means, and that just seems incoherent. And then the Machiavellians and recognizing the nature of power and cycles of power in societies, and seeing that and like that was when I was like, okay, yeah, so this is just, it doesn't matter how ethically right or not right it is. This is just not a political system that will ever have any sort of viability. Mm-hmm. So then I wanted to zoom out and figure out, okay, well, how have these cycles of power played out throughout different societies? What has been the key to the ones that have survived? What's been the key to the ones that have collapsed? Why? How did we get here? And I just kind of kept zooming out further and further and further. Mm-hmm. And the Machiavellians is kind of a good teaser for that, because it starts with Machiavelli. It starts in the early second millennium, and a lot of the political struggles and stuff that were going on then. And so for me, it was the pragmatic case that against anarchism that really pushed me away from it to begin with. And then as I began looking at alternatives, I started recognizing this pattern of anarchism being almost like a false Christianity. That is, there's actually major ethical problems with it. That on the surface, it seems like it seems kind of anodyne or kind of harmless, not just kind of neutral. Yet, as you kind of start digging into it a little bit, especially as you start comparing it and contrasting it with actually true apostolic Christianity, then it became very clear to me that not only is this pragmatically not a viable path, it's actually ethically not viable. It's anarchism, I've now come to believe, is explicitly it's anti-Christian. It's not. I don't think you can, I'm not gonna go after someone who claims to be a Christian anarchist, but I don't think that you can hold those two together. I think that they're fundamentally in opposition to one another, because one of them has Christ at the center, the other has the individual at the center.
Patrick Madrid, a Catholic apologist, said Sola Scriptura is the blueprint for anarchy. And he meant that, of course, anarchy means chaotic, but I think that you can take that in a very literal sense for a lot of Protestants in the libertarian community.
I think it was Father Josiah who said that Sola Scriptura is the heresy from whence all other heresies, all of the other Protestant heresies flow. Because if you take that, the Sola Scriptura issue, and Protestants hate hearing this, but the Sola Scriptura issue is so foundational in across such a cross section of issues that the Sola Scriptura doctrine is a demand for authority. And the question comes down to who is the authority? Again, this is the Christian anarchist split. Who is the authority? Is the authority God, or is the authority the individual?
Yeah, I like the phrase that has who has better authority? A line of priests going back to the apostles, or the guy who bought an abandoned Pizza Hut named Zimbob, who opened the Bible one day and hoped to get people in his doors? You know, it's like, okay, I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up. Zimbob's kind of funny sometimes, but it's...
Yeah, shut up, made by Jim Bob.
I use Zimbob as a reference for a lot of like redneck pastors, and I actually found there's a guy named Zimbob kind of in our circles, and I'm like, I never listened to Zimbob before. I don't hope I'm not insulting him.
What's funny is that he actually will do that sometimes himself. He'll be trying to use the example of the kind of doofy white trash guy, kind of white trash pastor, and he'll say Jim Bob. He's like, I guess I can't use Jim Bob in that way.
Yeah, it is.
There's a great 2-Bit podcast said in the comments, he's quoting, he says, I think Pete Q, he says, you can disprove libertarianism by not believing in it. That's really good.
Yeah. I'm on a libertarian point. Like when I made my announcement, kind of like I didn't want people to feel following me. And I stopped being a libertarian for a while, and I was making tweets, and I was getting comments from people saying it seemed like, well, I'm not very libertarian or such and such. And so I'm like, okay, I need to make the announcement. Apparently, I have to announce I'm no longer libertarian to get these losers to stop commenting the same basic arguments. Like I haven't. Yes, I've read Anatomy of the State. I probably actually finished it when you haven't.
Yeah.
I don't know how many libertarians start a book and claim they read that book. That's a pet peeve. You can always tell when someone stops reading.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could tell Ace. Like I still like Ace. I think he's friendly. I have my issues with him. He's kind of gotten worse as he lost his friend group.
Mm-hmm.
But you can tell he stopped reading new things.
Yes.
And that's like you can always tell. Like you never like seeing that, but you always tell when someone is still reading. You know.
As I was headed on my way out of the anarchist world, I kind of inadvertently found myself in the situation where I was doing the where you like light the Zippo and toss it over your shoulder. I wasn't necessarily trying to do that, but that's kind of where I found myself. And that was one of my critiques of Dave Smith, was that it was very clear that he'd stopped reading at a certain point.
I forgot about Dave Smith, honestly. Like until you said his name, I was like, oh yeah, that was a guy I listened to every day for like 6 months.
And I watched this kind of happen in real time because I was in the Part of the Problem Inner Circle Facebook group, and there was a guy in there named Kyle who was a big Moldbug proponent at the time, and that was my introduction to Moldbug. Actually, was seeing Kyle posting and trying to get Dave to read it. He was like, "You're right at the point where this is perfect for you. Read this; it's going to transform the way you look at the world." And Dave was just kind of like, "I don't have time for that. You know, I'm busy. I got my show. I got stuff to do. I don't have time to read that." And I was like, the Dave of a few years ago would have been all over something like that. That was a big kind of red flag to me when he was like, yeah, whatever. And I think since then he's gone, like Moldbug actually became kind of a big deal and it was unavoidable. And so I think he went back and read after that. But at that point he was pot committed in the route he was going. But yeah, that was, if you ever heard of argumentation ethics, oh my God.
Yes, it's dumb.
There's a guy on Jim Bob's channel that goes on on his panels sometimes. And argues for argumentation ethics, and it's just the biggest
so stupid.
The one thing that you need to tell these guys is argumentation ethics needs Christianity. Christianity does not need argumentation ethics. That's as simple as it gets.
Yeah, when I was leaving libertarian, I wanted to make that clean break and get rid of anyone who was like just following me because I liked a few political tweets, and so I went hard I went after Scott Hall and I went after a lot of people. I made really honestly not great arguments, but insulting arguments.
Right.
Like if in Kapistan, everything is just defined, then rape would just be a fine, meaning every woman could be a prostitute. Now, do you have to pay more for the prettier women's, or is it kind of like, he was never going to get it anyway, so let's just pay her less? Right. And of course, they're like, you need to read this book. I'm like, you're a faggot. It's just, I probably got to bleep that now or something, but we're far enough in, whatever. It's just the amount of people, I mean, I had some cool people I saw, like, what's his name? That loser. Well, period of the 20th century. Peyton. I tried to say on to Peyton friend. I like him as a friend. He's a friendly guy. I met him in person. I'd love to talk to him again, honestly. But he couldn't really draw that line between political and like friend stuff. And so it was he was arguing with Pete, and I liked his comment. Like Pete's comment, he blocked me instantly. And it's like, okay, whatever. Pete was right. Nothing is sadder than the beard of a Orthodox convert. Especially in his case. I mean, they just converted. I gotta grow it out when they physically they can't do it. It's like no. I don't know if Buck can or can't grow a beard, but he looks good without the beard. So he doesn't need to have one, but a lot of them do need a beard.
Yeah, fortunately, I had it before I converted. I brought it with me.
Praise the Lord. So after we both kind of made our clean breaks, I was already kind of making my focus kind of like Catholic stuff and theology and that kind of stuff, but I really dove much more into it. What about you? Were you kind of already reading that kind of stuff, or did you dive deeper into it once you kind of left anarchism? Like, what was the connection there? Is there a connection, or?
I'd pretty well left anarchism. Well, let me put it this way. My journey out of anarchism sounds so retarded. My journey, you know what I mean? Yeah. My journey out of anarchism was a continuation of this on the same track as my journey into anarchism. I didn't feel like I U-turned or or even turned at all. I just was kind of continuing along the same road. And the way I visualized it was that getting to anarchism was me kind of tearing down the old edifice. And then I arrived at anarchism, and the natural, logical follow to me was monarchy. And Moldbug was major toward that end. Hoppe was, even though Hoppe's not a monarchist, Hoppe was pretty compelling in that direction for me as well. Because when I read a book, I'm capable of reading the book and understanding what the person is saying and appreciating what they're saying and still disagreeing with them. Dude. So yes, I know Hoppe's not a monarchist, but reading his case for monarchy in a contextual sense was pivotal for me understanding the case for monarchy in a general sense.
I don't know how many people's, real quick, the argument against me was, I saw you said you read Lee Walkwell. I'm like, I have, but you're saying stuff that contradicts. I'm like, I can read a book and not agree with it.
Right.
Like, the argument was you have poor reading comprehension. I'm like, what the fuck are you saying?
No, you're too stupid to read it and disagree with it. That's what it is. So
frustrating. So you were saying.
Yeah, so I was pretty squarely in the monarchist camp. And what I was starting to think was like, okay, well, it seems like if what I'm starting to believe about monarchy is true, that it's essentially an inevitable state for humans, that it's a pattern that we're perpetually chasing, and we're going to create a monarchy eventually. We're in the act of creating them all the time. Then where did this pattern come from? How has it played out in the past? If I can understand that, then I can figure out and try and chart a course to where it's going in the future. So I started going back in history, and I was just kind of picking random times in history and just studying an event just to try to understand it. I'd been big in like conspiracy theories and so then of course you get JFK, and then you get the ultimate conspiracy theory that you're not allowed to talk about on YouTube. And I'm not just talking about the one from the last 3 years.
I don't know which one you're referring to then.
Well, it's one that you're not allowed to talk about in public.
Okay.
In general,
you can tell me after.
Literally illegal in some places. I just reading about these different things, these different perspectives, and starting to recognize that history is not a science, and it's somewhere between an art and a religion. So it's just a story. Like, it's a story that everybody has agreed upon, and different people have their incentives for agreeing and not agreeing. And you can't prove these things objectively. You can't objectively prove that Alexander the Great existed, or much less that he existed when he existed. These things can't be proven that way. And so I was starting to look from kind of a really zoomed out perspective, looking at patterns of history and cycles. And so I got into the Graham Hancock cycles of catastrophe and sacred geometry. And, at the same time, I'm kind of going into Eastern mysticism, getting into like Buddhism and trying to understand Nikola Tesla stuff. And like that's kind of where my mind was going. I was starting to get very kind of abstract and spiritual. But in my mind, it was a scientific pursuit. Like, I was approaching it as if I was like an archaeologist kind of. And I've kind of realized archaeology is much less of a science than I originally thought it was. Anyways, so it was just kind of natural, I think, that eventually I was going to bump into Orthodox Christianity, given those overlaps, like ancient history plus Eastern mysticism. Like, Orthodoxy is a pretty natural off-ramp there. And so someone recommended Lord of Spirits to me, and that's what really did it for me. So I started listening to Lord of Spirits because someone was like, "Oh, they talk about giants." And I was like, "Oh, okay, there's the history that I wasn't told that I want to know about." Sorry, Tom Woods. So he
needs a giant episode. I would love to watch that.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah.
Give him what's his name? Path from Timeline Earth to talk about giants.
Yeah.
That would be an incredible episode.
Yeah, so that's kind of how it went. It went like from anarchy to monarchy to ancient history, Eastern mysticism, orthodoxy was kind of all of that stuff sort of synchronized for me into orthodoxy.
If you remember, what was the first like Orthodox in your hood? Like, what's the first Orthodox? Like, was Lord of Spirits was the first Orthodox podcast you listened to? Like, was there anything before that was like Orthodox you heard? Like, what's the first thing that kind of caught your attention?
I think it would probably be Lord of Spirits. There was Vin Armani had his kind of conversion right through the same time. I kind of was right on his heels, and he brought up some stuff that made me think about it. But I kind of got to where, as I was questioning the Enlightenment, that led me to questioning the Reformation, which then got me back pre-Reformation. And so I got to the point where I was pretty well convinced that the truth lay somewhere in either Roman Catholicism or Orthodoxy as I discovered it. So I think it was probably Lord of Spirits, because I remember starting to listen to Lord of Spirits and having this thought in my head that I was like, Orthodox priests, or like, I don't know what this is. Is this like some kind of weird Catholic thing? And then kind of starting to learn about it through that process. And then it was Father Josiah was a big deal for me as well. And then I encountered Jay Dyer pretty quickly, and then went from there.
Like I said, I've watched Jay Dyer in a new light ever since he explained it to me once. It was we have to remember was Jay is probably autistic, and so when he's angry, it's because people just aren't getting it.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, okay, I still don't necessarily watch him often, but I see him kind of like, I watched him debate with the anarchist guy on the Crucible. I'm like, oh, I see it.
Right.
He reminds me of Jeremy from Contradentilas a bit.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, I've heard some of Jeremy and Saturday Western's argument. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, same. It's the same vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a genuine question. What is truth, God?
Yeah. What is the truth?
What is?
I would say, yeah. Who is the truth?
Who is it? Yeah, that's better way to. Truth is a transcendental, what I would say is, God.
And in order to have the possibility of knowledge and the possibility of relationships, the truth has to be personal.
Yeah.
So it has to be a person.
I would agree. Yeah, that's one thing I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to get into it, but I have been I found a Dominican priest who makes his studies focus on like reconciling Palamism, not reconciling, but hoping Thomists understand Palamists. And so he's made his focus like reading Palamists, reading Eastern Fathers, reading the Greek stuff, and then trying to hoping people understand it so they can actually engage it and understand it better. And it's been interesting. And I don't. My hosting is like, I think it's a really good like analogy of sayings. I don't know if I can say it's I think analogies are really solid. I mean, but I can use the same kind of analogies for divine simplicity sometimes. So it's definitely been an interesting saying. I would love to actually maybe in the Discord one time kind of talk about that a little bit, but I'm not ready to talk about that on a camera in front of people yet.
Yeah, right. Same here. Part of the reason why I kind of fell off the planet a little bit over the last year was because I was consumed by all of this stuff. It was a lot of the way that I've done the show in the past has been just kind of stream of consciousness, whatever's on my mind, just talking about it. And as a catechumen, I felt like I had a responsibility to not be super vocal about a lot of this stuff, just focus on my catechism. Yeah. And then just lack of knowledge, just genuinely not knowing the answer to a lot of these things and being overwhelmed by the sheer volume of new information coming at me all the time, and realizing it's kind of like if you had like a big empty room and you thought you knew everything in the room, and then all of a sudden you found like a hidden door and you open that room and you go in and there's another big room, and you get that room all cleared out and you think, okay, now I finally figured it all out. Yeah. There's another secret door that goes into another room. Like pretty soon you're going to start being like, okay, I'm not going to be confident that I've ever cleared out any of these rooms and that I've arrived. There's always going to be something else. That's kind of what has started happening with me. So I don't want to talk about this stuff in public generally unless I've really prepared and I'm very confident and and I don't feel like I'm setting myself up as someone who's teaching, that this is just me, some jerk off who doesn't know anything, just talking about how I understand and experience some of this stuff.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I remember Tommy had me on for an episode on what is Thomism. I'm like, I think I could answer those some questions, but I have no idea what kind of questions he's going to ask. I never know what Tommy's going to ask me. He's fantastic, but he'll bring out of nowhere question. I'm just like, I honestly, give me 5. Can we pause this thing for 5 minutes? Let me sing on Dad. Come right back.
Right? Yeah. Tommy's brain is something else, man.
Yeah. And until Jordan Peterson went down the hill, I always called him the redneck Jordan Peterson. But now it feels insulting to Tommy to compare him to that guy.
Yeah. I could see definitely. I was a big Jordan Peterson stan. It's been hard to let that go.
It has been frustrating. He got all that Jew money, and it's just been, yeah. Now let's talk about that for a second, actually, because I'm kind of curious on your thoughts, because it was kind of a question for a while that everyone kind of assumed he would convert eventually, but the question was like, what kind of conversion, because he was talking to Bishop Barron, then he was talking to Jonathan Pazzo, he was going to Orthodox liturgies, then he'd be going to Catholic liturgies, and the question was like, okay, where's it going to go? And now it just seems like he's gone the gay route, where it's kind of nothing.
Yes.
He's spiritually gay, so is nothingness, and it's just like he's spiritually non-binary,
pansexual.
Yes. Oh, I hate that.
Yeah.
And it's been a weird. I mean, he's had a few episodes where he's had people on like Peter Kreeft, who I'm a fan of, but I watched it for Kreeft, not for him. And every time he speaks, I'm just like, can I skip this? Double tap, 10 seconds. It was, he's just what happened? You think I have a theory on like kind of like what happened there, but what do you think happened?
I think that he's, I don't want to say that as strongly as I was going to say it. I think that I'll just say this: I think demon possession is real, and that if you look at his story with that in mind, it's pretty easy to see that. I don't know that that's the case, but it definitely seems to connect a lot of dots if that is the case. That's how, I mean, he even told a story. I need to see if I can go back and find this story at some point, but the early on, I think this was just before his big kerfuffle with Russia and everything, and the drugs and all that. He talked about having like a spiritual encounter, like in the middle of the night, and feeling a presence and hearing a voice, having someone talk to him basically. And he interpreted it as a prophetic call, and he rejected it. He said like, no, you got the wrong guy. This isn't for me. I can't do that. And it was like I remember hearing him talk about that and thinking, man, if that's true, then there's going to be some shit going on in his life pretty soon. And it was like within months, he just completely nosedived. So then connecting that with him going into this deep, dark place and then coming back out, seeming like almost like a really bad AI version of himself that just doesn't, it's like you can tell it's supposed to be him, but it's something's very odd. Yeah, something's off. There's some kind of uncanny valley thing going on there.
Exactly what I was about to say, uncanny valley. The way I've always kind of looked at it was he was getting closer and closer to the truce, getting closer and closer to, to God by proxy of the truce, by one of his essences, I guess I'll say. And then if he had that moment where he had like that prophetic call, and he went from there, he kind of had the downside going through, let's say, the whale for its own analogy. And it's still rejected at the end of that whale call, at the end of the whale, and that has got to be just spiritually crushing. And if you have rejected that, and by byproduct, probably going to reject that, the acceptance of that spiritual crushingness, and not seek reconciliation and penance and go through that process, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse until he has that come to Jesus moment and gets out of the whale.
Right. And he's surrounded by a lot of people who want to use him for their various purposes. And I think that he is, it's weird given all of his other strengths and all of his experience and stuff, but I think he's very naive. He seems to make a lot of really naive decisions. And so that's a really bad combination. Like a guy who's rejected a spiritual call, who's gone through all sorts of turmoil, is under all kinds of pressure, and is surrounded by a bunch of influences that want to pull him in all kinds of different directions. And then to be naive on top of that is just, Yeah, he's a mess.
We're sad. Needs our prayers. Because I
Very
would love
much.
nothing more to hear a story like he's gonna go away. Like, would love you nothing more for a story like I'll be gone for 6 months, and if he comes back and he's like, I stay at a monastery, I've converted, I'm back, and I would love
Yes.
that would be like the greatest comeback story. And honestly, if it does happen, that conversion story and that was what he could do with that would be incredible. I've been rereading Zona a lot recently, and I think it's probably one of the best. Best is a strong word to use, but I think it's one of the most analogous stories for today. I guess is the story of Zona. That call and then that running from it. I truly believe that intuitively everyone. God's law lay in the hearts of man, according to Saint Augustine. Everyone intuitively knows truths. Everyone kind of intuits these things. God has laid claim to everybody through salvation. All of them have been called, and you can't intuitively know that, and then you can still reject it. And I think that rejection leads to people running from it the opposite direction. People try to hide from that. I think they try to hide with that in sin and carnal pleasures. And I think you try all these people who are raised in the faith and then run away, and they go all the way to the extreme where it's like poly relationships, OnlyFans, all that kind of stuff. They're trying to hide in their sin and just reject the intuitions or change their worldview so much that they have new intuitions. And so try to hide that original intuition and keep running from that. I think Zona represents the times and very well in that sense.
That's a really interesting thought. Yeah.
The story of Zona. It's only 4 pages long, and it's incredible. I'm trying to find as many search files or commentaries as I can on Zona because it's just
interesting. That's kind of I haven't heard anybody thinking or talking about Jonah recently. So it's almost. I mean, everybody's heard about Jonah and the whale, but then nobody really talks about the story all that often, especially one that's that, like you said, that's that dense and.
It's 4 pages long, and you can read through in 10 minutes, and it's still getting more stuff out every time.
Right.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I heard of Bishop Barron lecture. He was giving a lecture to a bunch of seminarians going to read the priesthood. He used Jonah and Jacob as examples of the priesthood in the Old Testament. And he went through Adam, Abraham, Jacob, and Jonah as examples of priesthood in the Old Testament. Really fantastic lecture. Finished it immediately with Jonah, and then I immediately wanted to watch the Veggie Tales of Jonah, which is still one of the best Veggie Tales. I mean, listen, I'm going to say this real quick. People, we believe God permits things. God did not create evil; as a privation of good. God cannot create evils, but God can permit things that bring about greater goods. And I say He permitted Martin Luther so Veggie Tales could exist. Okay, Martin Luther walked so Veggie Tales could sink. Okay, this is why this happened.
You had Martin Luther, so you could have silly songs with Larry.
Exactly. We had 95 Thesis has to happen because the silly songs with Larry are just so good.
Barbara Manatee.
Those movies slap. Honestly, the humor is just top tier.
You know what's funny is I've always had this image in my mind with Bob and Larry as Tom Woods and Bob Murphy. That connection. And then that just.
I need someone listening right now to say I doesn't find someone who can do it. Of Tom and Larry on Bob and Larry. I see it now. Bob and Larry just talking, but someone add in a Contra Krugman episode. Just edit that over with and then post it on YouTube because this.
Oh man, it would just be. The other thing that's funny too is that I wouldn't say that Bob and Larry from VeggieTales are like these other guys, but these other guys are like Tom and Bob, and that's the Lord of Spirits hosts. You've got Father Damick, who is similar to Tom, where he's the host. He's very very well educated, knows lots of stuff, and can kind of be a little pedantic about things. And he also plays the straight man so Tom plays the straight man to Bob Murphy's jokes, and Father Damick plays the straight man to Father DeYoung's jokes too. So there's a similar vibe there.
Dude, the story of VeggieTales is so sad to see where it's at now. you know.
Yeah.
But back in the day, I mean, Pixar called them for help because they were just they were the only people who could do those cheek animations. And the whole reason it's vegetables is he wanted to make it singing candy bars, but his mom was like, "How bad would you feel?" So his wife was like, "Your mom would feel so bad if you started trying to sew candy to kids." So I think his mom was like a dentist or something.
Oh, that's funny.
And so
we
became
did vegetables instead. So it would have been like candy bar tails.
Yeah.
That's funny. Instead of the peas, you would have had Skittles running around.
And the humor, man. I mean, there was that one was what's it called? Oh my God, Joshua and the Wall, Jericho. And it was like,
Josh and the Great Big Wall.
Yeah, it's like we know like a day swimming in the Nile. All the workouts we could get, it was paradise. It was like we were in slavery. He's like, nothing is perfect. Like that kind of humor cannot exist. I want to see it anywhere nowadays, you know.
Once upon a time, I could sing almost every single Silly Songs with Larry song, or like all the other songs too, like the Bunny song from what was it? It was
Radsack, Mesack, and Abednego.
Rack Shack and Benny. Rack Shack and Benny was the Bunny song. I went to high school at a boarding school up in Canada on a carrot farm. And so we would work like harvesting the carrots, and then we were like on a conveyor belt where you had to like sort them and trim them and bag them and everything. And so we would be standing there on the conveyor belt singing like VeggieTales songs at the top of our lungs together. It was a pretty good memory.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's even if I ever have kids, I'm still gonna have them watch VeggieTales, even if it's just a little. This is Old Testament stuff. You can always add to it. I mean, the Esther one is probably my favorite depiction of the Esther story. It's. I mean, honestly, this way they depict the stories is like they do a fantastic job of not underplaying. The island. I was terrified of the island of Perpetua Tickly when I was 8. I mean, that people looking character was a feather scared the crap out of me, you know, and that did not undercut the story at all. It worked. It was funny, and it symbolized how actually scary that situation had been in history.
Yeah,
you know, there's some really impressive story making.
Cooper asked, "Are Bob and Larry gay like Bert and Ernie?"
I mean, they probably are nowadays.
Yeah, right.
New VeggieTales on Netflix probably made them gay. They gayified the vegetables. But,
oh no! This is going to go really bad, really fast.
So, are you still a catechumen, or have you fully like been baptized yet?
I'm going to be baptized in about 3 weeks.
Oh, awesome, man! Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. Yep. So, what's the effects on it? Because I know that when I first became Catholic and I started praying the Rosary and I started, you know, learning more prayers, or you know, meditating on Scripture, or you know, just kind of having like, you know, like I guess the pray without ceasing. No, I guess like prayer without ceasing. I'm like, how do I do that? You know, as a Protestant, and I realized, oh, it is actually prayers like in this kind of repeat throughout the day. You know, I mean, the Jesus prayer and the breathing that seems to go with it is phenomenal.
Yes.
The Glory Be. There are so many just great prayers to just, you know, as you go about your day, just to say, and the effect on that. I know that if I have like a bad day and I don't do it, I know I could have had a better day, regardless of the circumstances around me, if I was doing that.
You know, one of my favorite things is the Lord have mercies. And I'll just go throughout the day sometimes and just be saying, Lord have mercy, 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 Lord have mercy. And my son's 2.5, and every night when we do our evening prayers together, he perks right up at the Lord have mercies. So we're starting to teach him how to say them. So I'll be saying the prayers, and then I'll stop, and we're trying to get him. He goes, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. And we go, one more. And he goes, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. And we're like, no, one, Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. Yeah. But yeah, it was, I came from a Christian background that was very, very anti-apostolic Christianity just in general. I was Seventh-day Adventist growing up. And Seventh-day Adventists, I mean, a key tenet of Seventh-day Adventism is that the papacy is literally the Antichrist. That the beast in Revelation is the Roman pontiff. That's an Adventist belief. So that's how I was raised. And and so they're like hardcore sola scriptura. They're very they're probably more Arminian, and they And then they're like hardcore about the biblical Sabbath, observing the biblical Sabbath in their minds, which is sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. And so there's all these things that you're expected to do, and yet they're very much against the idea of you being able to earn your salvation. So it's like you're required, there's like severe social pressure to do these sorts of things that are, I mean, to them, observing the biblical Sabbath is literally the salvational issue, that it's going to come down to the end times. There's going to be a national Sunday law, and you're going to be, worship is going to be mandated on Sundays, and that the true Christians are going to be the ones who continue to worship on the biblical Sabbath. So it's like, from that perspective, then things like reciting prayers, like pre-written prayers, and like bowing and kissing the hand and or the cross of the priest, venerating icons, all these sorts of things are all like they're horrifying to the mind of an Adventist, because it looks like to them they're watching like a pagan ritual, which is, it's so the irony from this side, like having been there and then come here and then looking back, the irony is just crippling. But to me, it just kind of naturally, Cooper said SDAs aren't totally sola scriptura when they consider Ellen G. White's writings as equal to or more authoritative than Scripture. Yeah, that's an extremely divisive topic within Adventist circles. So they have their prophet, Ellen G. White, and I think that it's splintering up so much now that it's a little hard to tell. But if I was to shoot for like the heart of Adventism, they would be both sola scriptura and hold Ellen G. White's writings as authoritative as Scripture. So
no, I gotta say, at least that's like consistent to me. You know, like I don't agree with it obviously, but I get it. Like I get like obviously the Lutherans. If you sing Martin Luther, we claimed and we discovered and we made Christianity, then wouldn't he be a prophet of biblical proportions to set everything right? Well, he's not a prophet, but he is your prophet. You know,
right.
He's using their lies to be scripture.
Right.
But it's
actually
one of my favorite books. That's a great book.
Yeah.
Luther, as far as problems, is a phenomenal writer.
Oh yeah.
There's no denying. That guy is fiery.
I was going to say fiery was exactly the word I was thinking of.
Yeah, you can't put it down. You start reading and just like I'm here all night, I guess. You know, he's yeah.
It's with the thing with the SDAs with sola scriptura, like that's. But yes, they wouldn't see a conflict or a contradiction in saying they're both sola scriptura and Ellen White's writings are, but they wouldn't say Ellen White's writings are Scripture. Like they would hold these ideas independently. And then there's lots of debate that, well, Ellen White was it's like a tier below. So you have Scripture and then you have Ellen White. So she's better than everything else, but she's not Scripture. And then people who would say that everything she says doesn't contradict Scripture at all.
It's a woman?
Yeah. Ellen G. White.
Yeah. They really just dropped down by like Jehovah's Witness level real quick.
And get this, her big turning point in her life was when someone threw a rock at her and hit her in the nose and broke her nose, and she had like a major concussion and then started having visions. I'm not joking. So yeah, it was a it's there's more modern Adventists are kind of like, let's just keep the Ellen White stuff over there. Let's not talk about that because for obvious reasons. Yeah. But yeah, so to do like reciting pre-written prayers is very, very odd and staged to an Adventist. But for me growing up, I just kind of I'm naturally like if you do the Big Five personality test, I'm like extremely high in openness. So which is kind of weird because conservative people tend to be very low in openness. Being very high in openness is a very liberal thing. This is probably where my hippie side comes from. I was like 98 out of 100 in openness. Wow. And so for me, it was just kind of a natural transition. I was persuaded of the truth of it. And then it was like, reciting a prayer seems like the most natural thing to do. Like, other people wrote this prayer for me, and so I'm going to sit here and I'm going to read this prayer that's been written by people who are far holier and far more spiritually accomplished than I am. Mm-hmm. It seems like the completely natural thing to do, and in fact, now it seems like weird and insane to me almost to just sit there and just kind of pray extemporaneously off the top of my head. I know there's a place for it, and but it feels odd to me now. After getting so used to saying recited prayers.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a weird trend I've seen in some people when they convert to an apostolic form is they go, I think, too full bore in the opposite direction and want to completely drop and reject anything that was Protestantism. I'm like, hey, Protestantism, for all its fault, is born out of Christianity, so there are those things that are holdovers that are all true. And it's because they have been Protestantized does not mean you can't re-sort them, re-orthodox them. You know, they gotta, you know, what was it now? Message, divine liturgy. Go into a. Is it called a mass for you guys? Like, I'm not quite sure. It's liturgy. Okay, and again, because I've never been. The only Orthodox church in my entire county is in a double wide trailer. It has some very nice people, but it's just kind of like it's a trailer on the side of the road. Yeah. I actually didn't know it was Orthodox. I always kind of, for some reason I associated there was like it's a trailer on top of it, like the ice cream looking bowl with the cross on it. I never saw the cross when driving by. For some reason I assumed it was like a synagogue, but then I realized there's no Jews in Polk County. I have never met a Jewish person in my life.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah.
Going strong, 24 years. But so is what kind of effect does that have? Because I know that once I became Catholic, I started going to Sunday Mass. The peacefulness of it, throughout the whole day, kind of lasts. There's when I was going to my Pentecostal church, you leave fired up and rowdy, and you go home and have a lazy day, and it kind of just felt off, But then having that, going to Mass, having a very tranquil, surreal, incredible experience, and you go home and you kind of had this, you're at ease, you're at peace, you kind of read some more, you study. It kind of just makes the whole day flow better. Especially if you go back for, you guys have like an adoration type thing? Like, I don't, again, there's gaps my Orthodox knowledge, so like, I assume you guys have a Eucharist, I'm assuming. Or do you not call it the Eucharist? Or?
Yeah, we call it Eucharist, yeah.
Okay. Do you do like an adoration thing where you display the Eucharist and you kind of just pray in the presence of it? Or is that like a specifically Catholic thing?
No. Okay. No, I don't. I mean, there's a part where I still don't remember, I don't know all the parts of the service just yet, because there's kind of two schools of thought to when you're first attending a divine liturgy. Some people say you could get the prayer book and sit there and follow along and understand the whole thing as it goes. And then there's other people who say you shouldn't get the prayer book at all. You should just stand there and just take it in. Because it engages all your senses. Just stand there and just take it in. And I've been more toward the latter. So I don't really know all of the specific parts of the liturgy. I don't know exactly what they're called. I don't know exactly what they're doing. I'm just standing there and just taking it in. Listening to the singing. The singing is something I sang when I was in high school. And music has always been a big deal to me. So I'm usually very much tracking the music and listening to the chanting. And then smelling the incense and looking at the icons on the wall. So I'm very much kind of just sort of captivated in the moment as it's all happening. And then having a 2.5-year-old running around, because that's the other thing in Orthodox services is very different than Protestant services. Kids just kind of get free roam. They just do their thing, and as long as they're not like completely melting down or being majorly disruptive, then they're free to come and go and kind of do whatever they're going to do.
That's awesome.
My wife is an absolute saint. She chases the kid around just all over the place. Typically, the way it works is for the first half to 2/3 of the service, she chases him around, and I sit there and take it in, and then I take him outside and go walk around outside, and she hangs out for the rest of the service. So Cooper said that the Eucharistic adoration is a Catholic thing. Okay. So yeah, it wasn't something that was familiar to me.
Yeah. Well, so those who don't know what it is and who are listening is after they do it randomly throughout different times, but my church does it after Mass. They take the host, that's the Eucharist, and they place it in. I actually don't know what it's called, but it's a giant golden cross type thing with you put the Eucharist in the middle of it, and it's the presence of Christ, and you can't just pray or meditate or just kind of talk to God, recite a prayer, kind of maybe just sleep, and just kind of be in the presence of God for however long you're there. Actually, there's what's his name, Jacques Maritain, a Catholic philosopher I'm a big fan of, Thomist. When he was in Paris, he wouldn't sleep, but he wouldn't get a bed. He would just go to a chapel that had adoration and spent the whole night there, and kind of just pray till he fell asleep and wake up and pray some more and then leave and go do his work. And I love it. No, the tabernacles would hold the host during tabernacles would hold the host before, after, and during when the service is not going on. When you're not doing the, we're not actually taking it out and performing the mass. It's a it's a very peaceful like few hours. You kind of just set your brain off, and like the best times have been, that's one thing I love about masses, honestly, in the Catholic liturgies, is that when there's incense, there's senses, all your senses are hit. You're hearing people, like I went to St. John Catansis up in Chicago. Beautiful church. I mean, every little thing meant something, even the way the floorboard was arranged meant something, the way the seats were placed meant something, everything. And so you kind of sit in there, and there's beautiful singing, Gregorian chants at the top. I love how you can't see the singers in the Catholic Church. That is the best thing to me, because every single project usually I've met has been a douchebag. Just the worst people you're going to meet. I can't say any of them. You can't see the singers, so there's no people trying to get attention, because it's always the hot guys who go up there and then sneak out with the girl afterwards, but they're not doing anything they shouldn't be doing. And so your incense hits, you smell it, you're seeing it. Every sense is hit. You're kind of just in the presence of God, and it's just a beautiful. I mean, something was Augustine who said, "Mass would be heaven on earth," so the church should be beautiful, and that you should be walking in there to be like a teaser of what heaven is like, And when I'm in adoration, I'll like I don't think I'm falling asleep, but I'll like close my eyes for a second, and I remember like open them, and it's like 2 hours later. And it's like, okay, I don't think I fell asleep because I didn't snore or fall over, but I was just like, time did not pass for 2 hours. I was just there. And there was no boredom. I remember I was bored. So there was no boredom. There was nothing. It was just pure out of myself, drawing out of myself into the presence of something else. And, I think that's what heaven would be. Heaven, not to get, you don't know really what it could be like, but, the way I've always liked the explanation is, when you're having the best moment of your life, you're like, you forget time passes, you're having a really good conversation, you're at a concert, you kind of just forget time's moving, you kind of just in a pure state of joy, and you don't know what's happening around you. That's heaven. That's, connecting with God. That's you're being drawn out of yourself into something else. And so that's why I love Mass on Sunday, adoration afterwards, and the whole day is just, I mean, I have a few days sometimes I miss it, and the whole week I can tell it's just not right. Something's not right that whole week when I miss it. And I think human beings need that. I think we need that, because we're highly amorphic. We're body and we're soul. We're not, one or the other. Not a body, so you're body and soul. And so, drawing out of yourself, out of the body into that, I think is just needed for human beings to properly function throughout the day. Everyone needs to be drawn out of themselves through something, through a deep conversation, through music, through something that draws you out of yourself. Because we're fallen, we suck, we hate ourselves. You should not always be conscious about yourself. You should be drawn out of yourself and forget you exist sometimes.
Yeah, I really agree with that. The Orthodox services are, there's very few and or no pews in an Orthodox, or chairs or anything. Some churches will have some seating around the like maybe the very front and around the sides for those who just physically can't stand. But 90% of people stand for 90% of the service of the liturgy. And yeah, there's one thing, I don't know if this is the case in a Catholic church, but I know that the Orthodox perspective of the liturgy is that it is it's literally an encounter with heaven. I mean, as much as you can say literally, that it's we're all joining in a timeless process or a timeless experience. So it's kind of like having a door open and looking into heaven, and so you're in the presence of heaven for while you're there during the service.
There's a great book from Scott Hahn called The Lamb's Supper, and it's an entire book on Revelations. And his whole thing is like Revelations is the liturgy. It is like you could find every part of Revelation you can find in the liturgy. And and that the revelation is saying heaven literally is heaven on earth. That's what it is. You walk in, it is heaven on earth. You are experiencing a glimpse of heaven in your life at that moment. And I really I've been getting, because I always been a Protestant, I was always kind of wary of revelations, mainly because I was fear-mongered about the rapture for most of my life. Like, I mean, I don't know if you ever saw this, but there was a video, it used to be very popular, and it was of a Protestant church service, pastors up there waving his Bible around and preaching, and it was a flash of light, and like almost everyone was gone, but there was a few people left standing there, and they just fell to their knees crying. The sad music played, they were left behind. And they would play that for fourth graders every other Sunday.
Oh my God.
While I was going. And I remember, like, if I was leaving my room and I walked downstairs and my parents were gone and I couldn't get a hold of them, my first thought was, oh shit, I was left behind. It's over. I got to go watch that Nick Cage film. I got to go watch those movies and read those books. I got to know what's going to happen. And it's just, I mean, absolutely awful.
That's
and so I always try to avoid Revelation. But now that I'm Catholic, and we had a visiting priest a few weeks ago, and he gave a whole homily on Revelations. And I was kind of worried again, because I'm like, oh, here we go. It's going to be something. Because I actually didn't know rapture was a Protestant doctrine created in the 1820s. I did not know that. And so he gave it, and he said, God did not send Revelations to scare you. He sent it to encourage you. And I heard that. I'm just like, shit, I got to read it. I got to read that. So I went home and started reading it, and then I found some commentaries on it. And it's just been like, okay, this is a pretty awesome book of the Bible. You know, it's definitely something people need to read and engage Protestants fear-mongering on with it.
Yeah, I grew up with a lot of Revelation, Daniel and Revelation, because Adventist churches are very big on biblical prophecy. They have their own kind of unique interpretations. But the Adventist church actually was founded when a Methodist preacher named William Miller was doing some studying in Daniel and came up with a prophetic timeline that ended in 1844. And the way that he interpreted it was that in 1844, Jesus was going to return. And so he started the Millerite movement preaching about this and kind of whipped up a pretty big fervor about it. So there was people who were legitimately thought this is going to be the end of the world. They sold all their stuff. This is in the Northeast somewhere. I can't remember exactly where. New York, Massachusetts, something like that. They sold all their stuff and they all got together one night, and the night that they'd calculated down that it was supposed to happen. And obviously it didn't happen. And so then they went back. If I remember the story correctly, they went back and recalculated and realized they'd made a mistake. And actually it was supposed to be a week later. And so they went and did the same thing a week later, and it still didn't happen. And so then they went back and to try to re-understand what happened and realized that was the date not for Jesus's return, but when he, as the high priest in heaven, went from the holy place into the most holy place. And so that initiated essentially the beginning of the end times, where we're now living in the actual end times, as I can't remember the name that they have for it. It's been so long since I've thought about it. But so it's like early on, you get dumped into prophecy and Daniel and Revelation and learning how all these prophecies map out and the different historical events that correspond with them. And then there's a big focus. I mean, Advent is obviously a reference to Jesus' return. So there's Seventh Day, they worship on the Sabbath, and Adventists. So they're obsessed with the Sabbath and they're obsessed with the end times. So I've spent my whole life with a lot of end times anxiety too.
Yeah, it's I used to make a joke because I have a cousin-in-law who's very, very big on that kind of stuff. But he's a very weird Protestant because their pastor is called a bishop, even though they're Protestants. And I've kind of just stopped engaging with that because I'm like, I'm here with family. There's a time and a place, and I don't have the energy to undo everything he just said.
Is he an Anglican or like an Episcopalian?
Nope. I think it's an Episcopalian. It's
like
a weird
American
thing.
Anglican.
Yeah, it's very, very weird.
My priest used to be an Anglican bishop. He was raised Roman Catholic, then he became an Anglican bishop, and then he converted to Orthodoxy.
And he's just bouncing around all the good
years
ones.
ago or so.
Minus the Anglicans, of course. They're not. They exist because the guy got horny. So does honestly, so does Lutheranism, because Luther banged a nun to encourage it.
That's true.
So I'm just saying, stop being horny and stop creating heresies. Okay, this is what happens. Horniness creates heresies. The 8 pipeline. No, I used to make a joke with the guy because every time he tried to predict or give some new conversation about when he thinks it's going to happen, I'm like, God said no man will know the date. And every time you guess the date, he pushes it back. So just stop trying to guess it because maybe it'll happen.
Yeah, you're preventing it from happening by continuing to guess it. That's funny.
Well, we've gone for an hour and 4 minutes. We're supposed to. I got to get to the pub tonight because it's St. Patty's Day. I really have no more questions. I guess the one thing I want to get into is if you want to talk about a little bit is theosis, because I was looking into that, and it is a concept in Western Christianity, Catholicism as well. Aquinas talked about it a little bit. Is this not something that it's we talk about it, but we don't really use the word theosis, and I don't know what reason there is for that, but people have used it in the past, so I just want to kind of see if I get if you're willing to, if you could explain it real quick, I can kind of just get a understanding of it some more.
I'll give you something you should definitely watch on it. I just watched this yesterday. Are you familiar with the channel Gospel Simplicity?
I believe so. Oh, yeah. I do watch him sometimes.
He just interviewed an Orthodox guy named Seraphim Hamilton, specifically on theosis. It's the title of the video is Theosis as the Heart of Orthodox Theology with Seraphim Hamilton. It's essentially so I'm going to I'll just give kind of a broad overview of my understanding of it here. Obviously, I'm not speaking for the church, and if I say something stupid, it's because I'm stupid. It's not something about the church. Essentially, theosis means can be like transliterated, basically like divinization or deification, and it is the end of salvation, essentially. And by the end, I don't mean the end as in like the termination. I mean the end point of the trajectory. It's a. Sorry, I was seeing the comments. They distracted me.
Me too. We got some good people commenting.
So Saint Athanasius has his well-known quote that God became man so the man might become God, and the essence energies distinction is key with this, and they talk about that in that video. So I'll definitely would encourage people to go listen, go watch that video. Essentially, as you participate in the energies of Christ, then one of the energies of God is being God. And so as you participate in those energies, you begin to be remade in those energies so that you're becoming God, not as God is God, but as the full realization of humanity. That this was the original destination of humanity. That theosis would have been a thing even if Adam had never fallen. The incarnation would have happened. Christ would have taken on human nature and would have divinized it through his life as a human. This was always intended. And so essentially as you participate in the energies of God through the life of Christ, then you become, and energies is a literal translation of the Greek word energeia. It just means it sounds woo woo, but it just means like activities. Yeah. So you're participating in the activities of God, and God is the one who does God's activities. So by participating in God's activities, you become like him, so much like him that you are, what's the phrase that we receive by grace what Christ receives by nature. So the Father communicates the divine nature to Christ, and then by participating in his life, then we receive that nature by grace without losing our humanity. We continue to be human, but our humanity is divinized. Okay. That's essentially that's the rough overview of what theosis is, but it's really at the heart of all of Orthodox theology. You'll find as you just dig into Orthodox theology, you keep running into it from all kinds of different directions.
Okay, thank you. Because that's something I hear it I've heard it a few times. I'm kind of like, okay, how do I put this? It doesn't seem wrong, but when I hear sometimes on Twitter it's going through and someone will say, "Man becomes like God," I'm always kind of like, okay, hold on. I need you to clarify some terms here, because that could kind of go off in the wrong direction if someone's explaining it poorly.
Right,
and
right.
So I just want to make sure that's good. I wanted just to get a clarification on that. That's a good clarification. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah. In that video that I recommend with Seraphim Hamilton, he particularly distinguishes between the Mormon idea of divinization and the Orthodox idea of divinization, because these are not the same things.
Yeah.
But the essence energy distinction is key. That's really one of the key differences between them, having the distinction between the essence of a thing and its energies or its activities.
Okay. Well, I don't want to end the stream because I'm having so much fun, but I do have places to be. Sadly, I'm supposed to be there now, so I have to wrap this up. Sadly,
if I could say real quick to Minder in the chat, he said, "What does argumentation ethics needs Christianity? Christianity doesn't need argumentation ethics mean?" If you can, reach out to me on Twitter or join the Discord. Subscribestar.com/Kingpilled. You can join our Discord, and I'll answer the question there. It's a little bit of an explanation, so we're getting out of here now, but I'll address that, and maybe in a future stream here I'll address it as well.
Hell yeah. Okay, well, this has been a lot of fun. Great stream. Thank you so much for coming on, Matt.
Yeah, likewise.
Go and get your plugs. Where can people find you at?
Yeah, Twitter at RealKingpilled, and then the YouTube channel is Kingpilled, and that's where everything's happening right now. And if you want to join a Discord full of people, that Caleb's in there. We got a bunch of guys in there. We have a great time talking. We do voice chats, and
those voice chats are banging.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just a good group
them.
of guys. Yeah, I have a lot of fun in there. So if you want to join that, then you can sign up. We've got a paywall. The paywall is specifically to keep trolls out, but we haven't put the paywall too high, I don't think. So if you want to hop in there, then subscribestar.com/Kingpilled. Just sign up for one of those, and you'll get automatically added to the Discord.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you everybody for listening. Matt, thank you for coming on. Updates. Hopefully got a stream coming out tomorrow with Cato in person. It's gonna be a lot of fun. It's actually a hassle because he was supposed to record 2 weeks ago, but then he got sick and his car broke down. So 2 weeks late is apparently Brazilian on time. I've been informed. But I had reorganized the entire apartment for recording in person. And we record, and I can reorganize it back for when Matt comes on. But now I have to reorganize it again tomorrow just to record in person. So it's just been a hassle.
It is Lent, so.
Yes, my struggles.
Yep.
So yeah, that's happening. Make sure you subscribe, because even though I'm stepping away, osteotomism is still going to go strong. We still got people making episodes. We still have articles coming out. I'm still going to keep up my writing. I'm still going to try to write articles and focus on that. I'm still open to appearing on podcasts when I stop my podcast. If anyone wants to invite me on for something, I'm on Twitter, reach out. And if it's not too theological, because I don't mind talking about that, but there's certain things I'm trying to stay away from on my discerning process because I don't want to speak out of turn. So I'll let you know if it's too much for me, too much for me at the moment. But yeah, like, comment, share, subscribe, and stick around because Ironcast and Bokov are doing a great series on Degrees of Knowledge. So hope you enjoy it. Anyway, yeah, thanks for listening. Have a good night.